but the images and the CSS, which kind of stand alone and can function on their own, probably don't. So that creates kind of a weird gray area. When you package a theme, there can be codes and these multiple licenses in there. And the bottom line is most theme developers, it seems, favor just GPL licensing everything just to make it consistent and easy.
We used the thesis theme, and I know there was an issue with that some months ago, a big blowout about it. And I didn't really understand it because I don't have a technical background, so I didn't even know what the it was that was the issue.
Yeah, and basically what was going on with that kind of recap was the makers of Thesis were saying that themes don't have to be released under GPL license because they weren't doing it at that time. People at Automatic were saying that it does. They had a huge disagreement and sort of almost blew up and went to court. But I believe they decided to release Thesis under the GPL, and pretty much all was forgiven, forgotten, and they moved on.
They did? I didn't know they did.
Yeah, I believe that was the end decision. I'm not so sure about that, but I'd heard that they had changed the license of Thesis to GPL in order to placate those issues.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Still sell GPL code.
Right.
It happened in July, actually. Thesis adopts GPL. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And, on Link. But it happened in late July of 2010.
I know it was coming to a crescendo, and I really didn't understand it, but I really felt it was like primary and derivative works kind of thing.
Yeah.
Was I correct?
It's partly that. But basically what the allegation is that when you develop a theme, since you're using WordPress code and integrating that, 'cause you have to make it work with WordPress. You have to put those WordPress hooks in there that you're making essentially in sort of a roundabout way, a derivative work of WordPress, since you're integrating so much WordPress code in there. And that was really the whole disagreement as to whether or not that was the case.
Very interesting. I remember, not on Matt's part, but I remember on Chris's part, it was very heated.
Well, I think honestly it was heated for Chris, but it seemed like it was the community that got really heated on both sides.
Really? Okay.
I honestly, there was a pretty strong disagreement there, but I think also the community really was eager to jump and start a firefight on that one. I think that made it worse in the long run, but it ended up being resolved.
I'm really, really glad because it's a terrific theme. I mean, I know there's a lot of good themes, but it's a helpful organizer.
Well, I'm looking to change themes, so maybe I'll switch to Thesis now. Who knows?
I really like it. You live in New Orleans, right?
Yep, I live in New Orleans.
How is it going there? How are things since Katrina?
Things are pretty good overall, I would say. The truth is, the things you think of when you think of New Orleans were not deeply impacted by the storm. The French Quarter spared the worst of it. Business District spared the worst of it. That never really took much damage. There are parts of it that haven't recovered, probably never will. But most of the city seems to be making a pretty decent recovery overall, and it's largely thanks to the actions of the citizens, because they kind of took charge of things on the ground here, and it really produced some pretty impressive results. And they kind of formed neighborhood action committees and took to things, and they've done a pretty good job overall. There's still a lot of challenges that lie ahead. Crime is a big one. Population is another. They've got to trying to get back to pre-Katrina levels on population. But the city overall is doing very well. The Saints won the Super Bowl last year. They won't be playing for it this year. But so things have been going pretty good, if you ask the New Orleanians, it seems.
That's great. Have you always lived there?
I've lived here about 8 years now.
Wow. What is your greatest challenge helping people with their websites?
The greatest challenge I run into is there's always sort of a disjunct, and this was something I ran into myself when I first started dealing with this, was we understand at least what we feel is right and wrong. And we know when we feel like we're doing something that's right and is okay, or when someone's done something that's wrong in our eyes to us. But taking that emotional, almost visceral response there and turning it into something that can be applied productively under the law, can be applied productively in terms of what we can do with the technology we have, is a real challenge. It's not so much a matter of, learning how to use the tools and knowing what the law is. It's trying to figure out how to apply these things in practical, everyday situations to help people. And that's really where about 90% of my challenge comes from these days, is taking a look at specific situations and trying to figure out a way to connect the tools and the laws with what they need and what they need to understand or do.
Do you still write yourself, aside from Plagiarism Today and on copybyte.com? Do you do private writing outside of what's on the internet?
I've actually got a side career as a freelance writer. I write on a variety of sites out there, bloggingpro.com, freelancewritingjobs.com. I write for freelancewritinggigs.com. I write for both of them. I write for who is hosting this, and I write for Blogging Tips. And I've got random articles appearing all over the internet as well. So I still do a lot of writing.
That's great.
But I do it mostly for some level of pay now, at least. But I don't write as much personally anymore. But it's not because of plagiarism issues. It's just because I'm writing so much for Plagiarism and everything else. By the time I get home and it's time for private writing, it's really time for video games at that point. I've written enough for one day.
I can understand why Laurel von Fossen called you a rock star. She says to me, he's a rock star. I just love him. He's a rock star.
I love her to death. She is crazy.
She's a one of a kind, isn't she?
Yes, she is, definitely. She's crazy in the best possible way.
Well, I really want to thank you for joining us on the show, and I really appreciate your time and your input, and very sorry about what happened to you, and I'm so glad that you used it to turn things around and to help other people with content theft, copyright infringement, and plagiarism, and help position people so that they're free and clear of breaking the laws, and yet at the same time, they have a remedy, and they have you to go to at copybyte.com and Plagiarism Today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking with, learning from, and listening to Jonathan Bailey. He is the founder of Plagiarism Today and copybyte.com, and you can go there to reach him. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much.